one. I think you want to consider the question because Mike has a lot to offer. And when I'm not on the air, David Tulis, Mike Gallagher fills my spot. And I'm very grateful that he has filled my spot for some time. I was taking my earlier a couple weeks ago, ending not a sabbatical exactly, but a lengthy period of review of our local economy. And also the Administrative Notice Project, the Transportation Administrative Notice Project, which is complete. And now I'm in the process of publishing this one city council, one county government, one sheriff's department at a time, shifting the burden of proof away from the victim of the officer to the officer who has now to explain why he is violating the law in a traffic stop where the traveler says, "I'm not in commerce, I am using the road privately." Well, this is David Tulis, and that is an obscure corner of liberty, perhaps one that does not have a great constituency. It has, though, the constituency of many immigrants and also many people who are in minority groups who have their paperwork out of order, right? Who, when they come to the Gestapo traffic stop or have the lights hailing them to pull over, they are out of order. They have a revoked, suspended, expired, or none on their driver license. And so they are facing jail. They are facing arrest and a great turbulence in lives among the poor already marked by contingency after contingency, interruption after emergency, as it is in the houses of common people who often are living on their last $10 bill before their next paycheck comes in, held by their employer for 2 weeks, not paid daily as the Bible requires of the Christian, but held after 2 weeks. Some people not paid until once a month. Work done and not paid, held by the employer, held by the employer, held by the employer, as the working man or working woman struggles to survive, has to go to the payday lender to make ends meet, not for capital investments, but for consumables, right? For groceries, for gas money, for oil changes on the old car, and the like. David Tulis here. We are concerned about the state of our state of Tennessee and what happened Saturday or Friday in East Brandon Road, off of East Brandon Road, I believe, has marks of illegality. That is to say, a Tennessee Highway Patrol traffic blockade that was scheduled Friday, in sometime Friday, probably after I showed up there, asking the Exxon man nearby that intersection between East Brandon Road and Talley Road, had there been a roadblock yet? When I rang in at about 5, and he said, no, nothing, hasn't seen anything. So evidently scheduled to happen later in the day, Friday, the day before St. Patrick's Day. Now, we want to indicate how it is illegal to have this roadblock without proper notice. The problem is in the lack of notice. Though a highway patrol lieutenant told me, as you can read about at yournews.com, we do it all constitutionally. And it's all done properly. Well, it wasn't done properly because there was no publication. The Times Free Press had no classified ad about the roadblock, and the Hamilton County Herald, which has the advertising department in Nashville, indicated no notice, no ad in the previous Friday's weekly newspaper here for Hamilton County. So we have an occasion for the Tennessee Highway Patrol and the Grand Department of Safety and Homeland Security to do it right. And that would be to have gotten in this last Friday's Herald an ad identifying the roadblock and giving the time, or to have had it put into the Chattanooga Time Free Press classifieds. But that didn't happen, right? That didn't happen. And I can assure you it won't happen, even though Lieutenant Bill Miller indicates that it's all done constitutionally. Well, not true. And what we have here, we're squabbling. Get this, we're squabbling over a detail that just shows you bad faith by the state of Tennessee and the agents of Governor Bill Haslam, the multi-billionaire governor, whose family company defrauded trucking companies by the millions of dollars in a criminal satisfaction obtained by the feds and civil litigation obtaining satisfaction by the trucking claimants and petitioners and plaintiffs in equity. And so we have the governor's agents are not following the few rules that exist, and so this is something we want to look at today. You can read about it if you want to make a bookmark for it. yournews.com, the Chattanooga page of yournews.com, where we have a discussion about the two ruling court cases that are effectively the law. Whenever you have a government that does things illegally, and whenever you have a court, the judicial branch, that enters into the position of making law, what you have is you have lawlessness by the state. And even on the minor points, truly a detail, to have a rule by the high court that you have to give publicity for your roadblock. Even that ignored by the Tennessee Highway Patrol, and I doubt honored either by local municipalities that may have joined in the fund if they've gotten transportation grants or Department of Safety overtime grants that let them play the field and trapping mostly private travelers and licensees on the highways for having their light out. If you go to yournews.com and read my story that came out Friday, in an effort to give some kind of warning to people, you'll hear the Lieutenant Miller talking about what the roadblock is going to do. Driving is a privilege; it is not a right, and so there's going to be a very aggressive review on your tag light. If you have a brake light that's out, you're going to get pulled over. If that happened to you on Friday, make sure you give me a call and recount your adventure with the law. And these are laws that are targeting drivers and operators. Those are a special category of people. Violation of light law, he says, will be probable cause for a stop. Now, if you missed the fun on Friday, it's going to happen again this coming Friday, according to the Department of Safety website, which is having a little bit of construction work being done on it, and I can't find. I thought I'd put that graphic in both of my posts about this topic, but there is going to be a roadblock this Friday in Hamilton County, and it will be. Let me open up the yournews.com to see the address. The problem with the notice rule is that it's not honored by the Highway Patrol. And I remember last year I had a very noisy argument with Lieutenant Miller about the requirement. He says, and the department says, that we don't have to give notice. Okay, we don't have to tell you what time or even where the roadblock will take place. So let's say you have a road like Suck Creek Road, where the Hicks case emerged back in 2001, 17-year-old case now. The defense was Jerry Summers here in Chattanooga. There on Suck Creek Road, you have this very, very famous case that let the high court make another review of its very, very sketchy doings, giving an unconstitutional search and seizure the green light, which is what these two opinions have done, the Hicks decision and the Downey decision earlier. So in Friday, the roadblock in Friday is at yournews.com. Find out where that is going to be. Well, I'll just tell you, Sequoia Road and Highway 27 overpass will be a seatbelt check on Friday. That's this coming Friday. And if you didn't catch that, if you're just joining us here on the David Tulis Show at 92.7, just go to yournews.com, the local page. And so what we're concerned about is that we don't have legislation anymore. We don't have a law controlling these cops and these troopers. We don't have a law. We have an opinion. So we have government by opinion. And does that bother you? Well, it may not bother you, but let me just tell you that it should grievously bother you that we have, under the doctrine of compelling state interest, we have these unwarranted searches and suspicionless traffic stops of people who have done nothing wrong, who are not even suspect in any crime.
Chattanooga Morning News with Russ and Val. Weekdays from 6 to 9 a.m. on Nooga Radio, 92.7 FM.
3, 2, 1.
Chattanooga Radio. Digital FM 95.3 HD4. 92.7 FM's news now.
A child in Chattanooga was crumpled by a car. Chattanooga police say a 5-year-old child was hit by a car on Beach Street at 18th Avenue. EMS described the child as stable. The area of the accident was briefly closed down while the police scoured the area. 2 electricians were fried at the nuclear plant. The TVA investigating an incident from Friday in which 2 electrical contractors were burned in what's called an arc flash. This was at the Sequoia nuclear plant in Soddy Daisy. TVA says it happened away from the reactor proper and the public was not in danger. Gunfire in Chattanooga. The CPD confirms a victim arrived at the hospital wounded by a bullet. Cops say the 30-year-old will survive. Officers combed the area of East 49th Street trying to find a gunman. The Sean Hannity Show is on every weekday from 3 to 6 on Nooga Radio News Talk 92.7. Russell Stroud, Nooga Radio News Talk 92.7 News now.
A few early showers to start out your Monday. Otherwise, a break in the action for much of the day. Mostly cloudy, highs upper 60s this evening through early tonight. A line of showers and strong storms, some possibly severe likely. Lows near 50, highs tomorrow near 60. A few showers, dry and chilly for the midweek. Get ready for springtime and get rid of all of those unwanted trees and shrubs with Paul Bunyan Tree Service. That's Paul Bunyan Tree Service, 706-937-TREE. That's 937-8733. And I'm Source Gene 12, Chief Meteorologist, Patch Report.
Traffic, news, and information. Nooga Radio. Digital FM 95.3 HD4 and 92.7 FM.
Sam Jordan, News Talk 92.7 Sports Now. The Chattanooga Mocs men's golf team opened the Linger Longer Invitational with a season best 5 under 283. Senior Andrew Weathers led the strong start with a 4 under 68. Team is 5th, while Weathers is tied for 6th. It was a great team effort with 1 under 71s from Lake Johnson and Etienne Broad, along with 1 over 73 by Luke Long. Georgia leads over number 8 Alabama by 5 shots. The Bulldogs posted 272, while the Tide came in at 277. Penn State is 3rd at 278, followed by Ohio State with 281, just 2 ahead of the Mocs. Virginia is 6th at 286. Chattanooga Football Club Soccer Camp registration is now open for events that will be taking place at Finley Stadium, Chattanooga Christian, during the dates of May 28th through May 31st and June 11th through June 14th, with 2 other dates set at Finley and Chattanooga Christian. Sam Jordan, News Talk 92.7 Sports Now.
The Tennessee Valley's news talk leader. Nooga Radio. Digital FM 95.3 HD4 and 92.7 FM.
If your computer is running slow, if you have viruses, if someone called you asking to get into your computer, just say no. If a screen pops up on your computer saying your data is going to be deleted and you have to call this number, don't call it. You need to call Affordable Computers. You wouldn't invite a stranger to come into your house records, so why would you invite someone to look at your records on your computer? With one wrong click of the mouse, you could be allowing access into your entire system. At Affordable Computers, we can stop them now. Don't be fooled by scammers and pop-ups that tell you you must call this number or your hard drive is going to be deleted. You need to call Affordable Computers. Call Affordable Computers now. Microsoft is never going to call you. Microsoft is never going to ask you to call them. If you see that on your screen, you are being scammed. Stop and call Affordable Computers. 423-499-1975. That's 423-499-1975. In Fort Oglethorpe, call 706-858-5888. That's 706-858-5888. Affordable Computers.
The Tennessee Valley's news talk leader. Nooga Radio. Digital FM 95.3 HD4 and 92.7 FM. Now, the smartest guy with a bow tie in Chattanooga, Tennessee, David Tulis.
The conservative position, the free market position on sanctuary cities is what? What is it? Let me ask you this question because you, my listener, probably have the wrong idea about it. And let me tell you how the idea of roadblocks and the idea of David Roddy, the chief of police, of Mayor Burke, demanding authority to arrest the poor because they're asking for money in a free speech act. These are pictures of a sanctuary city. No, they're not pictures of a sanctuary city. They're pictures of just the opposite. They are a picture of the walled city, the walled country. And my argument here is going against what a lot of people on the right or conservatives and a lot of what Republicans say, what they believe, right? Against the right, the marketplace, and even Christianity make the argument for the sanctuary city. And I'm concerned about these abuses of roadblocks by the Tennessee Highway Patrol and the Department of Safety and Homeland Security, overseen by Governor Bill Haslam, and also brought about occasionally by the Sheriff's Department, Hamilton County Sheriff, and even municipal governments, Red Bank, Saudi Daisy, and Chattanooga, East Ridge, and others imposing roadblocks, which are effectively an arbitrary intrusion into the personal liberty and privacy of travelers. That is what the Hicks case of 2001 describes a roadblock. It is arbitrary. It is effective. It damages the personal liberty and privacy of travelers under a cause that is deemed to be so great, so compelling, that we, the high court, these Republican and Democrat justices, are allowing it, and they have been allowing it for a long time, since at least the 90s, when the Downey decision came out, putting some kind of limits on the police state. We have a police state in Tennessee, and we have also in Tennessee, as David Tulis perceives it, a deep state. The deep state doesn't just exist in Washington. That aggregate of private families, foundations, organizations, regulatory bodies, banking entities, banks, and NGOs. These are the body, the hidden body, if you will, of the deep state that Dan Smoot warned about back in the 1960s, and other writers as well. It is there, and they exist on the state level, and even by the accounting of one very well-known researcher who puts a lot of his work online, even in cities, there is a kind of deep state. That is to say, the shakers and movers behind the policy, behind the government, who often profit and feed off of their connections, off of their inside knowledge of how things work. Whereas you and I, we commoners, we hoi polloi, are left out. The idea of a sanctuary city is one that you can follow up on at the platform of my chief sponsor here on the David Tulis Show, and that is yournews.com, yournews.com. And I have a post there by Bo Marinoff, who is with Reconstructionist Radio. He is a Christian Reconstructionist, the only group in Christianity that is dealing with these issues. The only group which had people such as the Marxist who attended the Marxist who took the right side on the panhandling story, Michael Gilliland. If these Reconstructionist writers had been found by Michael Gilliland 15 years ago, when he was a young man becoming disaffected with the Pentecostalist life that he and his family lived, his father was a minister, he would not be a communist and a Marxist and a socialist. He would be instead a devout son of the church, working to bring reform and justice, which I suggest, which your minister yesterday, if you went to church, preached to be true, that there is justice and righteousness only in terms of God's commands, in terms only of revelation. Apart from that, there is no justice. There is no equity. There is only the simulacrum of it, the pretentious claim to be about it and to be furthering it. These are claims made, of course, by statists and progressives and centralizers and bureaucrats and revolutionaries and de Sadians, followers of Marquis de Sade, de Sadians as well. They claim there is no external law, that it is one is one's own law. And as Jean-Paul Sartre, the French philosophe, said, you have every one of you the existential moment in which when you kill that person with no cause, you are more human than at any time in your life. That is from Jean-Paul Sartre. And Nicholas Cruz, no doubt imbibed deeply in that particular well that rejects external revelation and rejects the law of God. Roadblocks are a violation of the Constitution, and the court has minimal regulation of them by its policies, which has been converted into a general command. I think it's command number 9 for the Chattanooga Police Department on the conduct of roadblocks. But I forgot. I did not look at it this morning. What that the order, the general order is. But one part of that order is notice. And you ask me, well, why? It just seems wrong. If you're going to have a roadblock and you want to catch drunk drivers or people who are not wearing seatbelts as so-called drivers, then why would you want to publicize it? Well, it is to avoid so that people can avoid the roadblock, and so that the roadblock serves through publication. It serves as a deterrent. Publication allows the effect of deterrence. The judges say in the 2001 Hicks decision and the earlier Downey decision, deterrence is important. And so the demand I make based on the law. The demand I make upon these organizations is that they be scrupulous about saying exactly when and exactly where the roadblock is. That serves the duty of deterrence. And Lieutenant Bill Miller, in an interview he gave me Friday, you can read about it at yournews.com, says, well, his assumption is that people should not be able to avoid the roadblock. But of course, he's forgetting one important little rule that the court made, and that is there has to be an escape route provided for the blockade. In other words, if you see a warning for a blockade, you have to get off of it at the very next turn. Usually, the warning sign for it is right before the turn. That is the only escape road. Okay, there's only one escape road. It's ranged so that you'll miss it. You'll start thinking about it, and you'll go through it. You'll miss the turn, and you'll have to go through the roadblock. So Miller forgets that. But the idea of not giving notice is really just makes me very, very, very angry, and maybe you too. Think about this. We are going to have a meeting of our city council committee on the benefit of this block grant for school children in Hamilton County, and that meeting will be held Friday on Macaulay Avenue. Okay, is that enough? Well, that's not actionable in the way of details because you don't know when and you don't know where. And the same with a roadblock. We're going to have a roadblock on Sequoia Access Road in Saudi Daisy. Well, if you don't say when, then I can't use that road unimpeded. I have to avoid that road entirely if you don't say when and exactly where. The Friday roadblock being announced by the Department of Safety and Homeland Security is under the overpass with Highway 127, and that on Sequoia Access Road this coming Friday. That's the next roadblock in Hamilton County. We are told about that, so there is some notice, and that is perhaps to our advantage to know where. But what if you're on a long stretch of road, and you live in the country, and you have to go on that road 2 or 3 times in a particular day? Must you avoid the main stretch of that road just because the highway patrol is telling you there's going to be a roadblock on that road, but not when and not where? So you'll avoid that road entirely, greatly inconveniencing yourself and your personal business. You're fulfilling your personal necessities. Well, it's not actionable to say we are going to have a roadblock on this road and not say exactly when or where. It's like announcing, for example, we're going to have a public hearing of our State House committee on tuition payments, tuition subsidies for illegal residents, and that's going to be on Monday on Broad Street. Okay, well, is that enough? Does that make it informative as a detail? Well, no. You want to know where on Broad Street and when. Otherwise, it's impossible to attend that meeting, or it's impossible to avoid that meeting. You may end up going there because you passed right by and you didn't know how to avoid it. So the state is violating the rule. Think about this. The state has a duty of putting a classified ad in a newspaper somewhere of general circulation to notify people. That's all the notice that you deserve. It's not required to have a full-page ad, spend $5,000 on a full-page ad in the Time Free Press. No, it's just a classified ad buried somewhere in a page of gray in the very highly thinned out sections that are the classifieds in the local paper. And they're not even doing that. The legal ad rep at the paper and the ad sales rep in Nashville for the Hamilton County Herald said, no, there's nothing been given to us by state government touching on the question of roadblocks. So we have a sign here that the rules laid down by the court, right? The so-called judicial legislation in Tennessee is not being honored by the big agency that has hundreds and hundreds of cops prowling like sharks the highways and byways of our state, and also the boulevards, avenues, roadways, streets of Hamilton County, and even in Chattanooga. So we have a picture here of government that does not obey its own minimal rules, a minimal rule that really serves nobody any good. There's no one's going to notice that ad. Okay, the point I want to make is that you're right. I mean, you already thought about this. Who's going to see a classified ad 5 days before a roadblock? Whoever searches the classified ads? Well, nobody does. And yet it's just to fulfill a legal requirement, so-called, and these agencies don't even do that. So what do you think? I mean, do you think these people are interested in you? Do you think they really care about you? Do you think that all this talk that we're hearing from the Department of Safety and Homeland Security about public safety, about getting drunk drivers off the road, do you really think that's true? Do you really think they care? Do you think they care? Well, maybe they do. Let me be gracious and think that maybe they do. But we're talking here about the idea of sanctuary city. Chattanooga already is a sanctuary city, and Mayor Burke had only a little bit to do with it. Mayor Andy Burke, a Democrat lawyer, higher political aspirations in state government, maybe a senator, maybe governor, and he has something going on in Chattanooga, which we can credit to him, and that is that in many ways Chattanooga already is a sanctuary city. Think about why that would be, and it's not because he has a policy about it or has anything in the way of memos that you could read about in an open records request, nothing like that. It's simply that because there's so many laws. Federal laws, thousands and thousands of them published in 180. How many pages? How many thousand pages a year are published in the code, the CFR, the Code of Federal Regulations? There's just three columns a page. It goes on forever. We have relief from enforcement of these laws by the fact that most laws are not enforced, and that would be pursuant to Pareto's 80-20 law. That is a distribution formula that is true about many things in biology and human society as well. 80% of the money and resources spent on enforcing laws and regulations applies to about 20% of those laws and regulations. That's the 80-20 rule, and that would be 80-20 touching on the number of people who can safely ignore a particular rule or law, and those who might have something to worry about. That would be the smaller 20%. Now, cities and states ignore most laws that are there for it to be enforced, and the feds allow it. The feds allow that these rules are not enforced. They're not enforced because they really can't be enforced. There are too many of them. If all the rules were enforced in this chaotic maze of administrative law and regulations written by agencies, right? The agencies write the regs to make the statute come to life in their particular domain. So they're called regulations that have effectively the force of law. Their violations of regulations are tried in-house by administrative law judges, right? You don't even get a real judge and jury. You get an administrative law judge to hear a dispute in agency. I was in two of those in state government in the early 2000s. There's no jury. These are a legal domain distinct from judicial world where crimes and torts are governed. The administrative state is a fraud in a way because the state, the modern state, Nashville, whether there or Washington, they have a pretense fulfilling Hegel's dictum that the state is God walking upon the earth. Of course, God has three great powers: omniscience, omnipresence, and omnipotence. And Nashville and Washington, while pretending that they have these things, really don't. They have incoherent, multi-layered, many times self-contradictory parts of their administrative structures, which, if were fully implemented and fully enforced, would grind the economy to a halt. We would be in a state of collapse and poverty if all these rules were actually applied in fear by their subjects or imposed in enforcement from above by the agency police. You would have no economy. We would not be able to have even the lights on here in my studio, live on Facebook, by the way, live on Facebook at Nooga Radio. Make sure you like me, David Tulis, here at Nooga Radio 92.7 on Facebook. Make sure you like me. We're also 95.3 HD4 high definition channel 4. What we count on in Chattanooga is that the rules are enforced only sporadically by city government, by county government. These rules being state and federal rules, and even some local rules are enforced only sporadically. These government entities rely on self-government. They rely on fear so that people will obey them and comply with them and make other people comply with them, all in fear, right? They operate based on fear. The idea of a sanctuary city is inescapable. And every city is a sanctuary city because cities selectively enforce. Some city mayors make a big deal out of having a claim that we're a sanctuary city for illegal immigrants. Okay, that's the big one right now. And of course, President Trump is upset about that. You are violating the law, and your right wing, your Laura Ingrams and your conservative Republicans are shrieking about how evil this is. But cities are often turning a blind eye to violations. They just don't enforce all of their own rules and all of the rules that are imposed upon them from beyond. 800-8949 is my number, 800-8949. Call me if you have a question about this, or if you have a horror story to tell. Make sure you let me hear about it. I would like to hear your horror stories, or how maybe you had an encounter with an officer who said, or an official, a regulator who said, well, you're absolutely right. I'll leave you alone. Sometimes that happens too, even in Tennessee. Tennessee has instances where I've heard about where the official says, you're right. I'll don't worry about it. This has happened. And so city governments, as Gary North points out in a great little essay that came out in January, all cities are sanctuary cities. He points out that city governments pretend to enforce most federal regulations, and the federal government in turn pretends not to notice that the cities are pretending. It's just a delightful concept. And what I want you to realize is that in there is a certain liberty, a practical liberty. Of course, what we want here on the David Tulis Show, where we explore local economy and the free market, is real freedom and real liberty, not just liberty that occurs because some official is not paying attention to the rule that he's supposed to be hammering the back of your neck with. This is David Tulis, and I argue that you should love your neighbor and buy local. And insofar as city government ignores certain rules, Mayor Burke is to be thanked quietly. Don't do it publicly, because then if you bring attention to it, Mayor Burke is going to have to suddenly straighten up and start being proper and right to keep that federal money from flowing in. So there is a kind of a charade. There's a kind of theater of enforcement with rules which, if fully enforced, would force the Tennessee economy, the Chattanooga economy, and the American economy to simply grind to a halt. There is selective enforcement, and because it's selective, get this, that means that Chattanooga is in some ways not publicized, not talked up, not written up in Nooga.com or Chattanoogan.com or TimesFreePress.com or even Nooganomics. And the idea that there's not an enforcement of some stupid rule means that there is a liberty. Now, the federal government is going to end this whole charade at some point when it has a $21 trillion debt in the bond markets and the treasury markets that it can't pay and it won't pay. And beyond that, there is a total of $210 trillion obligations under Medicare, Medicaid, and Social Security and beyond that will not be met. And so there's going to be in some near date, and ask your financial advisor who's under a fiduciary duty to tell you about these things about this, because he's not going to know. He's not going to even know about how to talk about inflation, right? You with your investments and your financial advisors here in Chattanooga, these people can't meet their fiduciaries in warning you about, first of all, inflation, which has ballooned in the financial sector, right? The inflation that we're having in the past 10 years has not gone into retail. It has gone into the financials. And there is a drunken party being held by all these white-collar people with their big accounts, their fine cars, their fancy offices in Manhattan. And they are going to have a meltdown. And when the recognition comes in the market, in the debt market, it'll seize up, just like the poison of those mispackaged, deceptive liar loan mortgages poisoned the debt markets and caused a terrific seizing up, a grave cramp, right? A cramp so bad that it couldn't hardly move. $210 trillion in default ahead, and there will be a frantic, as North says, unstructured and chaotic and political realignment that will be in our favor. And Dave Crockett, the city council member, is waiting in the wings. Let's hope that time is good to Dave Crockett and he might make one more run for mayor. I think Dave Crockett has, though he is in his 70s, he has a remarkable view of things, and is, I'd say, is the closest we have to a statesman. So why do we want to have liberty? Why do we want to have sanctuary cities? I have proposed that Chattanooga become a sanctuary city, and the people who are in the know are already aware of this analysis. And you, my listener, you can be in the know too, taking advantage of this analysis, because when Mayor Burke is beginning his second term, well, he's been in for, let me think now, he's in his 6th year, so he's halfway through his second term, and did not run for a higher state office on account of the adultery scandal. But things passed, the public's memory fades, the voters start forgetting that public office requires high character, obedience to the Constitution, but also high character in obedience to one's private vows. Marriage, of course, not being a private vow, it is a public vow. Marriage, the United States between man and woman, is not private. Okay, so a man who does things beyond, outside the fence work that protects marriage, God's law, 7th commandment protects marriage, a civil official who acts beyond that, rejecting that law upon him, should perhaps be viewed with suspicion. But anyway, people forget, and Mayor Burke will go on to higher office. But we have in view the idea of a sanctuary city in terms of as I've suggested to him, that he create protection, not just from federal law on the side where these things happen, not just out of view, but he publicly and openly declare Chattanooga a sanctuary city vis-a-vis, that is to say, face to face, vis-a-vis Title 55, the Tennessee Transportation Code, which is one of the main feeding mechanisms for the police state, the police industrial, the prison industrial complex, the judicial police prison industrial complex, overseen by local judges in circuit and criminal court. Tom Greenholz is part of that system, as are city court judges, as are sessions court judges as well. Any one of them feeling helpless to stop it. No one knows how to stop the machine from grinding up the poor. And so what I proposed is that we recognize that the sanctuary city concept is already there. It already exists. And the question is, do we want to be a liberal mayor and say, well, let's have a sanctuary city for immigrants, or do we want to actually have make it a real sanctuary city by specifically identifying an illegally enforced law? Now, I have a letter of inquiry sent to Matt Lee, Sheriff Jim Hammond's spokesman. Real questions. I've published at Nooganomics.com and also at Euronews.com the sum of this letter. In fact, I reposted the letter. But I've not published yet. I'm just remembering now that I need to post for your benefit the actual questions to the sheriff. And we have probably need to do the same to Wade Hinton, the city attorney, about the protocol, the arrest protocol whenever there's a traffic stop. Every traffic stop is an arrest. And the rules of, not the ethics rules, but the arrest procedures rules in the police department recognize that from State versus Garcia and State versus Applewhite. I'm trying to remember the name of the second case, but both of them make it clear that for Fourth Amendment purposes, for the purposes of warrantless searches and seizures and arrests, the Fourth Amendment applies to every traffic stop at the beginning. And the city rules for the department require the officer to Mirandize the arrestee. Every traffic stop is an arrestee, and the first thing that come out of his mouth should be, ma'am, you have a right to remain silent, and anything you say can and will be used against you in court. That's what should happen. But you know why it's not done? It's not done because that terrorizes the public. And it's right. It should terrorize the public. If you're a private user of the road, not in commerce, you're carrying the kids to a soccer game or you're going shopping at the Aldi and you're pulled over, it is terrifying to be stopped, because what have you done wrong? Have you committed a crime? Have you injured anybody? Have you raped anybody, hit anybody, slugged anybody, shot at anybody, robbed anybody? The answer is probably no, and yet you're being arrested. The rules require Miranda, and the rule is ignored by Chief David Roddy, the man who is also attacking the poor, demanding authority to arrest people who are exercising a First Amendment free speech right to beg for alms and favor, cash or food or what have you. The poor people do that. Even people who are not homeless beg. We heard some of very doleful testimony to that account in the city council. The members neutrally listening to these appeals to them this last 6 days ago. Well, this is David Tulis. We are here at 92.7 FM. Local economy and free markets is our theme and our argument. And we want to ask about the idea of the sanctuary city, and the idea, even better than that, of the sanctuary country. And you were at church on Sunday, perhaps. Let me suggest to you what you might have heard about had the minister just opened his mind a little bit and opened his Bible, past some favorite passages, perhaps in Corinthians and Ephesians, which seems to be only choice selections, of course, read about from the pulpits in churches in Chattanooga, with the powerful claims of God's law largely ignored in Chattanooga by ministers. Here is why conservatives and Republicans are wrong about the idea of the border-free country. Remember this. Now, a border is simply, say, the border between Chattanooga, between Tennessee and Georgia, or the border between the United States and Mexico, is simply a line where the authority of a particular power who holds the civic role ends. Okay, it's not to say that we have to have a wall there. It's not to say anything other than the power to enforce a particular body of law ends here along the river. Now, Basil Marceau says the line in our area between Georgia and Tennessee is actually north of where it is, and so parts of Tennessee really need to be in Georgia and Alabama. That aside, the border is simply the line at which authority stops. It doesn't mean that we have to protect that border, and it doesn't mean we have to have a wall there, or that we have to have a cop with a machine gun nest at every road between the crossing of one border and the other. That's all that borders are for, that the authority of a civil magistrate, whether a king or president or a legislature or general assembly or a warlord perhaps, his authority ends here, and we all recognize that his authority ends here. Why is that a good definition? Because if you're a refugee, you're an economic refugee, or you're fleeing from religious persecution, or you're fleeing, you're a slave and you're fleeing your master, you cross the border, suddenly your master and the henchmen sent after you can't come in to chase you down, right? You are protected by having crossed the border. The great part of our country, the greatness of our country, was established when it was an open borders country. There were no borders. The federal authority had control only over citizenship, which is a privilege, right? Citizenship is just a privilege. And for most of our country's history, we were an open borders, wall-free border country. But in the 1920s, the Marxists, the communists, the unions, and some occultists got together and they got passed through Congress a very fearful limit on immigration and on people coming to this country so that they might live and yearn to live and breathe free, right? That had to be stopped, and it was done so by the left, right? By the left. Now, why is it that conservatives today, Republicans, Mark Green, for example, running for a high office? I saw part of his presentation on a video on his website last night. Why are people like he concerned about illegal immigration? What is their problem? To be against immigration is to be against people. And it's to assume also that there need to be laws controlling innocent people. The whole anti-immigration right wing in Tennessee and even in Chattanooga are people who are exacerbating fear. They're stirring fears, and every tyrannical bit of legislation, whether it's the Patriot Act or the Bank Secrecy Act of the 1980s, all of them are stirred into type and passed by Congress and the General Assembly based on fear. And fear is the new idol in our country. It is the new idol, and we want there to be. We are trembling with fear of terrorism and other things. And terrorism is not a problem. Terrorism is probably one of the smallest problems we have. That we spend $500 billion a year fighting it. Do you know that in 2017, 12 Americans were killed in 2 terrorist acts? Guess which body of people caused 100 times more deaths than that? Which body of people caused more deaths than the 12 terrorist deaths in 2017? You got it. The same people represented by Chief David Roddy, who is concerned about the poor and wants to arrest them for begging for money. The same people who have killed 1,184 people in 2017 are here trying to protect us from the poor, holding out their hand, asking for alms, asking for cash for a favor. The same people who have killed 100 times more Americans than terrorists did in 2017 are wanting a constraint there. They're always about walls. We need to make a wall between panhandlers, as they're called very negatively by cops, and public policy types in the mayor's office. We need to block panhandlers, and we need to put a wall between them and the public. First, we have protection against visitors at our tourist sites, and now we want to expand that wall, and we want to create it all around Chattanooga, around every individual who may have some money. The guy with the bow tie, we don't want anybody asking him for money, so we have to have a wall making it a crime to ask the man with the bow tie, the smartest guy with the bow tie. That's me, David Tulis, your host here on the David Tulis Show. Make that guy, the blogger with the biggest pin, protected. We want to protect him. We have a wall around the country, and the whole idea of immigration reform. Getting back to the point about the United States. The United States was the richest country in the world. It created half the GDP as an open borders country, and our decline began. Except with one gap in the 1980s where there was an open borders policy. We have been on a long-term decline financially, and our hope has shriveled. We don't have hope anymore. We live in fear. Republicans and right-wingers and cops and even Mayor Andy Burke's police department are wanting you to live in fear. Live in fear. We cannot have a sanctuary city. They say we cannot have a sanctuary country. But let's look some more at the nation of Israel, a free society, if there ever was one.
The Tennessee Valley's news talk leader, Nooga Radio, digital FM 95.3 HD4 and 92.7 FM.